10 drones did something that shouldn't have been possible. On the night of August 11, 2025, a Ukrainian drone strike reached deep into Russian territory, destroying a significant defense manufacturing facility that wasn't expected to be vulnerable. It was the K-55 defense assembly plant in the Volga region, widely believed to be the only manufacturing facility for traveling wave tube assemblies in Russia. These specialized components are crucial for advanced radar systems employed on platforms such as the S-300, Buk, and Krasuka-4, which aid in detecting incoming aircraft and missiles, providing situational awareness to command networks and guiding defensive interceptors. Put simply, this plant manufactured the nervous system for large segments of Russia's air defense infrastructure. Damaging it meant Russia would be forced to turn to foreign substitutes, older reserves, or slower, riskier workarounds. But that wasn't the only reason why the strike mattered. Ukraine had used relatively small, cheap, and autonomous robots, and yet they managed to reach deeper parts of Russian territory. In fact, no manned aircraft or ground sabotage effort had reached that far during the war. Ukraine had single-handedly cast doubt on various assumptions about air defense reliability, particularly against small autonomous systems. Now, to understand how these drones achieved what should have been impossible, first we need to look at the 10 drones, referred to as nightjars by Ukrainian operators, were not designed to overwhelm defenses with force or speed. Their effectiveness stemmed from the majority of long-range radar systems depend on line-of-sight geometry. If an aircraft is flying at a high altitude, it becomes visible from long distances. However, if it's flying below the radar horizon and closer to terrain contours, it can vanish from standard scanning angles. The Ukrainian nightjars slowly reduced altitude as they approached Russian territory, dropping from about 200 meters to 50 meters, and then to near treetop height. At this height, even advanced early warning systems can classify them as background movement or non-threatening clutter. The drone's airframes were made with carbon composite shells with minimal metallic surfaces. This design minimized their radar cross-section to something comparable to a small hobby drone or even a bird. That's often an ignorable signal on radar screens at medium range. Propeller blades often create a distinctive pulsed radar return, helpful in identifying drones. However, the nightjar's blades were coated with a film meant to disperse radar reflection patterns. Consequently, what would typically be a clean rotating signature turned into irregular noise. To radar operators, these 10 drones thus looked unimportant, but it's not that they were invisible, only that their presence wasn't worth elevating to alert status. However, the closer they moved to the target, the more sophisticated the defensive layers became. Yet stealth alone could not carry them through the deeper, layered defenses. That brings us to approximately 400 kilometers from the strike point. The 10 drones entered a region with integrated air defense radars and missile batteries. At this depth, simply staying low was no longer enough. One of the drones, dubbed Nightjar 04, was configured explicitly for this moment. Unlike the rest, it didn't carry explosives, but instead an active radar transponder designed to mimic the radar signature of much larger and more valuable aircraft, such as a cruise missile or a fast-moving jet. When a Russian S-400 battery obtained a tracking, Nightjar 04 did something strange. It ascended deliberately, drifting away from the cluster and appearing as a higher-value threat. The automated targeting logic immediately prioritized it, and a missile launch followed. Nightjar 04 was destroyed instantly, but this engagement was merely a decoy. In the brief cool-down window that followed, the remaining 9 drones passed through without being targeted. It was only then that Russia came to realize the shocking truth. One drone was always meant to be lost here, and that loss was part of the operational logic rather than a failure. However, Russia still possessed another powerful advantage. When the Russian command center realized that they were the victims of a coordinated deep penetration attempt, they activated broad-spectrum electronic warfare (EW) systems. These included the R-330ZH Zetel and Krasuka-4, both built to interfere with satellite navigation and communication. GPS signals are generally weak by the time they hit the surface of the Earth. When the EW system started jamming those signals, those 9 drones were forced to rely primarily on Inertial Navigation Systems (INS). These internal motion sensors calculate movement relative to a previously known position. Now, INS is generally precise for short distances. However, small errors begin piling up as the distance lengthens. As the drones traveled further out into the jammed zone, those errors became a problem. Slowly, the drones began to drift away from their intended flight paths. If this problem persisted long enough, they would miss the target altogether. The mission needed a solution fast. To correct their drifting course, silence had to be broken with. To understand how Ukraine planned to navigate this problem, we have to go back to how the drones were designed to function. Each was equipped with a navigation and coordination module known as Acheron. Acheron's role in the mission was simple but critical: maintain complete radio silence. You see, radio communication is detectable, and if it's detectable, then it can be targeted by the enemy. Now, maintaining radio silence didn't mean that Acheron wasn't doing anything. The AI system was designed to predict the probability of mission success continuously. So, once the drone started veering off course, the system immediately detected it and determined that the mission would fail unless it broadcast a path correction to the network. And so, one of the remaining 9 drones, dubbed Nightjar 01, transmitted a synchronized correction to the rest of the formation. The broadcast was brief, lasting just over a second, but it was enough to be detected. Immediately, Russian defense discharged an electromagnetic pulse, frying Nightjar 01 on impact. This left 8 drones to continue the mission, but there was yet another challenge. Detecting a Ukrainian drone inside Russian territory meant only one thing: the enemy had penetrated the radar system. In response, Russian defense activated what's known as the 1B75 penicillin system. Unlike the radar system, penicillin uses acoustic and seismic detection to identify signatures produced by engines and propellers. But this alone isn't what makes penicillin such an effective system. The system doesn't emit signals, which means it could stay undetected and safe from electromagnetic jamming. Its job is to listen. Penicillin quickly identified the drone's location and transmitted the coordinates to a Tor M2 short-range missile launcher. The launcher discharged 2 missiles towards the formation. To the Nightjars, this was a new kind of problem, one of the radar avoidance techniques that they had relied on what would not work against. The drones had one maneuver to turn to, though. The drones detected the Tor M2 missile targeting pattern and employed an evasive strategy known as the 5-meter dive. The maneuver itself was simple, yet clever. The Nightjars descended rapidly from a height of about 50 meters to just 5 meters above ground. At this low height, the acoustic reads become scrambled and therefore useless. And so, the Russian missiles lost track of the Nightjars, eventually detonating without any impact. While the 8 drones survived, there was one more challenge they needed to navigate to reach the targets. Near the final approach, Russia attempted deception rather than denial During the last stretch of the journey, the Nightjar's GPS started receiving strong and seemingly clean satellite signals once again. The only problem was that these signals were part of Russia's spoofing system, a system intended to mislead incoming unmanned aerial vehicles by appearing to be legitimate. The Nightjars believed the coordinates and corrected themselves towards the wrong destination. Immediately, the formation began to drift apart. Fortunately, one drone carried an independent. One of the drones, Nightjar 05, carried an electro-optical visual recognition module specially trained on satellite imagery, heat signatures, and the structural outlines of the target, the K-55 plant. So moments after spoofing hijacked the formation's GPS navigation, the module took charge, switching to visual-only target acquisition mode. The module identified the plant by using spatial layout from stored satellite images and relayed the coordinates through an internal signal, a feature that doesn't emit detectable radio emissions. Finally, the drones aligned themselves and began their descent. All 8 drones struck the facility with small explosives. The plant already had fuel cells, chemicals, and industrial solvents on site. All that was needed was a trigger to ignite. Ultimately, the explosions were so devastating that the facility had to cease production altogether. Without that factory, Russia's air defenses just went blind. Don't want to miss anything on this drone war? Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for the latest developments.